Okay, we'll get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Miss Taylor, and I am the chair for the middle school English department. We would like to start today's event by thanking our local bookstore, Books and Books, for making today's meeting with author, illustrator, and cartoonist George O'Connor possible. Mr. O'Connor is a Greek mythology buff and a classic superhero comics fan whose goal is to remind us how much superheroes like Superman, Batman, and the X-Men owe to mankind's original superheroes, the Greek pantheon. In his New York Times best-selling Olympian series, which is currently on its 12th title with the latest release of Dionysos, the New God, O'Connor uses primary documents to retell classic Greek myths as action-packed, fast-paced, high-drama adventures. O'Connor's vibrant art brings ancient tales to life. In addition to his graphic novel career, George O'Connor has published several children's picture books, including the New York Times bestselling Kapow, Sally and the Something, If I Had a Raptor, and If I Had a Triceratops. Please join me in welcoming George O'Connor.
Thank you so much. So hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is George O'Connor. I am a writer and illustrator, although the term I tend to use for myself is a cartoonist. A cartoonist is someone who uses pictures to tell a story, and that's basically what I do. Let me just go quickly to share screen here so you can see a picture that I drew. So if I did this correctly, and there's no reason to assume I didn't, you're looking at a big drawing of a bunch of people. This is what I call the family portrait of the gods, the Olympians. So as Ms. Taylor said, I draw and write a series of graphic novels or comics, I'll use the two terms interchangeably, that retell classic Greek mythology in comic book form. I call this the family portrait of the gods because it really is a family portrait of the gods. I don't know how many of you all are fans of Greek mythology, but one of the reasons why Greek mythology is still so popular, even years after people have stopped worshiping the gods for the most part, is because they're very relatable. The goddesses and gods of Mount Olympus, of ancient Greece, they're all a big dysfunctional family. Everyone you see in this picture pretty much is related by blood to Zeus. They're his brothers, sisters, sons, grandsons, something. Zeus is the guy, by the way, underneath the big letter I in Olympians. And I feel like that's a very relatable trait. I don't know if your families are like mine. I come from a huge family and everyone's insane in it. And probably your family is full of insane people too. And maybe it's huge as well. Even if it's small, probably it's crazy because people are crazy in families. People are crazy. And that's what the Greek gods are too. So even though they were these all-powerful beings that controlled the cosmos, they were very relatable because they had the same problems. They fought with their brothers and sisters just the way that we do as well. So I was supposed to come here today and talk about my latest and actually the final book in the series, Dionysos, the New God. But we live in a world where things are a bit unpredictable these days. And you've probably heard a lot of stuff about supply chains and things like this. Yeah, my book was supposed to come out last Tuesday, but it hasn't. You know, this is a picture of that boat that got stuck in the Suez Canal. My book wasn't on that boat, but various things like that have happened across the world because of COVID and other stuff. So my book has been delayed to March 8th. So I'm in this weird situation where I'm supposed to be talking about my 12 book series and there's only 11 copies. So what do? Well, I decide I'm going to talk about all the books a little bit. But first I'm going to talk about me. This is a picture of me way back in the day at my drawing board. And this is the way I am now. This was literally just a few days ago. I mean, pretty much the same person, just my nose got bigger and I got a little bit hairier. And I love to draw. This was always my thing. This is me at my house that I would draw when I was a little kid on my mom's drawing board, these giant pieces of paper. And you know, this is my new drawing board now. This is the sort of stuff I like to draw back in the days. It's also, you know, honestly, it's still the same stuff I like to draw. This is probably something I drew about 5th or 6th grade. I love to draw muscle men. I love to draw monsters. I love to draw the two of them fighting. I'm also very interested in the idea you can see in this picture of showing time passing. I'm actually using this picture to tell a story. We see the guy with the sword and the shield up front, his arms in two positions at once, back and forward, as he's cutting the other monster's hand off. This is the sort of thing you could do in comics. So I was basically doing comics before I even knew what comics were. And as far as Greek mythology, this little boy who loved to draw monsters and loved to draw muscle men fighting the monsters, school wasn't always easy for me. I was often the kid who sat in the back of the class. I was always the kid who sat in the back of the class and drew pictures instead of paying attention sometimes. I get in trouble. I'm going to get in terrible trouble. I got okay grades. But when we studied Greek mythology, it was my big eureka moment because the stuff I love to draw, monsters and muscle men and such, was the whole point of what we're learning in school. It was like a really life-changing time for me. This is actually a Photoshop recreation of the time I had to do an oral report dressed up as my favorite Greek god, which, if you know your mythology, you might be able to guess, is Hermes. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. And I carry this with me my entire life. This becomes my favorite thing. So when I grow up, I become a cartoonist, a person who uses pictures to tell stories. I created the book series I always wanted to read. Greek mythology to me was so exciting, but a lot of people get turned off by those long names: Poseidon, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Dionysos, and they don't read beyond it. But for me, these were the most exciting stories ever. So I wanted to read a series of books that really captured that, like a series of comics. And since nobody else made it, I did. I've been working on the series for I'm bad at math. Over 10 years. This picture is from 2008. So that's like 14 years, right? This was one of the original covers, like sketches I drew for the first cover of the first book of the series, Zeus. But we went in a different direction with the covers look. Unfortunately, I can't see you, but if I did, I would ask you all, hey, how many of you all like to draw? Put your hand up. And hopefully everyone puts their hand up high and is waving it. And then I would ask you as a follow-up question, who here has ever had that experience of looking at a picture in a book and being like, I could never draw that in a million years, no way, no how. And then everybody should put their hands up, unless they're the best artist in the world or they're just ignoring me, because that's happened to all of us. And this is just a little lesson I like to impart, a little thing to keep in mind as you draw. Nobody draws anything perfect. There's tons of mistakes in this drawing. I draw really, really fast. This is the way I have dealt with this. And I don't erase because I know I'm going to make mistakes and I want to have those mistakes to learn from. So when I screw up a drawing enough, and I will always screw up a drawing, I stop that drawing. I take it aside. I look at it and draw it again. Here's the other thing. No, the perfect drawing you see in a book, they didn't draw it that way the first time either. They draw pencils lightly. This is my light pencils for the cover of the book. And I drew this quickly because I screwed up a lot of versions. This probably only took me about 45 minutes. But then I was able to take this drawing, which mostly works, but has a few mistakes. I was able to just trace over the lines that I liked there. And it looked like something then I could have drawn in a million years, even though I totally did. So, like I promised, I'm going to go through my books real quick and talk a little bit about the different goddesses or gods the books are about, and maybe a story in each one. Zeus, he's the god of the sky. We know that. Athena is his daughter. She was the goddess of war and wisdom. This is book number 2 in the series. She's the smartest of the gods. She's also their greatest fighter. She's the one who has to protect them when they're under attack. And when the Gigantes, who are those gorilla guys with the rock over their head, attack Mount Olympus, she has to kill their leader, who's a dude named Pallas. Pallas is half goat, half gorilla. He's taller than a mountain, and his skin cannot be pierced while he's alive. He has a spell that protects him. And Athena still kills him in 2 pages. And this is the sort of thing you could do in comics that makes them so awesome. You open the book up and you see Athena's eyes. And in this one page, we do this zoom out, zoom out, zoom out until she's a little speck running towards you. And then we turn the page, how tiny she is compared to this monster who cannot be stabbed. How does she kill him? I mean, I'll give you a spoiler. She jumps up on his face and stabs him through the eye, which is, the way you kill someone you can't stab in the skin. And I'm just going to remind you too, I learned this story in 3rd grade. So that was kind of an intense story, but it really made me love these things as a kid. Like many kids, I wanted to be treated like an adult. I didn't like little kid stuff. I always wanted to be these serious stories. And this sort of thing that we were learning about, these sort of stories in class, grabbed my attention, grabbed my imagination in a way that nothing ever did. Hera, if you know your Greek mythology, she is the queen of Mount Olympus. She's Zeus's wife. But Zeus is literally the worst husband ever lived. And a lot of people who know mythology are surprised when I say this. She's my favorite goddess. And they'll be like, wait, why do you like Hera? She's so mean to Zeus and all his girlfriends. I'm like, yeah, Zeus and all his girlfriends. There's the problem right there, right? This is the myth of hers that I love. It's actually the myth where she and Zeus get married. Like I said, not a good marriage, but this is the part I enjoy. At the top of this page here, she reaches up and grabs Zeus by the beard and pulls him down. And she's like, oh, I'll marry you. But every time you screw up, Zeus, you're going to pay. And spoilers for about 90% of Greek mythology, it's Hera making Zeus pay for all his screw ups. It's okay. I mean, not a happy marriage, like I said, which is ironic. She is literally the goddess of marriage. But the thing that I really enjoy about her, one of the many things, is Zeus is actually afraid of her. He is the all-powerful god of the cosmos. And the one thing he is afraid of is Hera, because she is so fearsome and so powerful. This is book 4, Hades. If you know your Olympians, you might be like, wait a second, Hades isn't an Olympian, and you'd be absolutely right. Even though he's one of the great gods of Greek mythology, he's the god of the underworld, the lord of the dead. He didn't live on Mount Olympus. He lived underground. So he wasn't actually an Olympian. This book probably should have been called Demeter, goddess of grain. Demeter is the woman with the golden hair on this cover. She is the goddess of things that grow. She controls the seasons. She makes life come about. But the book's really about her daughter, Persephone. Persephone is the woman holding the weird black pomegranate there. This is probably the most famous Greek myth of all. Persephone is abducted by Hades, who carries her off to the underworld on a chariot to be his bride. It's the story that explains why the seasons are. It's so famous, I'm not even going to tell it here because we don't have time either. Poseidon is the god of the sea and earthquakes and horses. He's best known for having a really fiery temper. He's the middle child between Hades, his big brother, and Zeus, his little brother. And he's got some resentment issues for it. This is a shot from the book of Hades of him raging and churning the sea into a great froth. When people ask me, and they often do, who I think the most powerful god is, I always say Aphrodite, because she has the power of love. And the power of love may sound like it's kind of a foofy-doo power. Like, what does that mean? Think about it. If you had the power of love, you could make anyone fall in love with anything. And the gods knew this. She could make Zeus fall in love with like a turtle or a rock or something disgusting, whatever she wants. And so she has this power that's unmatched. She's also, interestingly, when I showed you the family portrait, I said how pretty much everyone here is related to Zeus by blood. Aphrodite's not. She's literally a self-made goddess. She made her own body for herself out of sea foam. So she's literally just the power of love and bubbles. And this is the moment when the world meets Aphrodite. She's just created her body and she steps out of the surf. And her power is such that just to be near her is to be in love with her. Even though you might be afraid, because she can make you fall in love with, like, I don't know, poop if she wanted, whatever she wants. And this is her stepping out of the surf and like the flowers erupting on the ground in excitement just to meet her. The one thing she doesn't have is good taste in guys, because the person she's in love with is Ares, the bloodthirsty god of war. I mentioned Athena as a god of war up front. She was the Greeks had 2 gods of war. Some of their gods, some concepts are so big they have more than one god for them. Athena was the goddess of skill and strategy and formation, like the good side of war. Ares is the bloodthirsty side of war. Like, he's just the slaughter. If you see, he's got blood dripping on his hands. He's always covered with other people's blood. Gods don't bleed. He's just covered in blood. He's standing in a pile of dead people. That's how you know he's not a good person to be in a relationship with. Although actually they have a pretty good relationship, so I shouldn't be, poo-pooing them. Here's a shot of Ares in the Trojan War, riding a chariot covered with knives. Just, he's like a lawnmower of human beings. And as scary as Ares is, he's not as scary. He's not the scariest Olympian. For that, for my money, I actually say Apollo. And if you know Apollo, you'll know that he is the god of music and poetry and song and dance, which sounds like he'd be a pretty gentle guy. But here is a story that really illustrates what Apollo's about. Ares would murder you if he sees you on a battlefield. But if you're not on a battlefield, he's cool. He's chill. He's just hanging out with Aphrodite. They're having a good time. Apollo, all right, this dude here with the horns and the beard is Marsyas. He is a satyr. He's like a half goat, half man. And he's found these little horns and he's playing the horns and he's doing this music and all his friends are grooving on it and everyone's having a good time. And in a moment of just feeling really good about himself, Marsyas says to himself, and there's no reason to assume Apollo's listening because Apollo's nowhere nearby. He's way, way far away on Mount Olympus somewhere. Marsyas just goes, man, I'm playing really good. I bet you I play as good as Apollo himself. And then like, bam, Apollo like just hears his name and appears there. And he's like, you think you're as good as me, huh? Let's have a contest, a music contest. If you play better than me, I will grant you any wish you desire. And Apollo's a god. He could do anything he wants. So Marsyas is like, I can ask for 1,000,000 wishes because he didn't do the famous don't ask for 1,000,000 wishes clause. And he's like, yeah, you're on. And they have a music contest. And of course, Apollo wins because you're not going to beat a god in anything. And Marsyas realizes that. He's like, man. And he goes up to Apollo, and you can see him in panel 3. He's really sorry. He's like, I am sorry, Lord Apollo. You won. And I just realized I never asked you what you want in return from me. You would give me a wish for anything I wanted. What can I, a lonely satyr, give you? And Apollo is like, nothing much. I'm just going to pull your skin off. And he does. He skins Marsyas alive. That's why Apollo gets my vote as scariest god. Because if you just upset him, he will kill you horribly. Luckily, he has his twin sister Artemis to keep him in line most of the time. Artemis is the goddess of wild things. She protects the animals. She also protects women. Really cool character. All her myths are kind of long. So what I do instead is I share this picture of her as a child, meeting her dad Zeus for the first time and asking for gifts of him because I like the way that she has the big gap in her teeth. She's a cute kid. Hermes, like I said up front, my favorite of the Greek gods. He is, I said Athena is the smartest god. Athena is actually the wisest god. Hermes has a quick wit. He's really smart, but he uses his powers just to cause trouble. And as a result, Zeus gives him all the jobs. He's like the god of like everything because you have to keep him out of business, out of trouble. He's also like super fast. He has so many jobs. He literally appears in hundreds of places simultaneously. He's constantly moving many times the speed of light. And he has a lot of cool stories. Like when he's born, he's already the smartest god. He's a baby and he's so smart. He knows, I can't let anybody know I'm not just a normal dumb baby. So he does all these tricks on his brother Apollo because he's already super smart, but he pretends to be a baby. This is the moment Apollo figures out he's up to something. That myth's too long to explain. There's also the myth about my favorite monster in Greek mythology, Typhon. Typhon had 100 heads. Each head was a different monster. They all breathed fire and vomited poison. They all spoke a different language. And he was so big that that little anthill in the corner is Mount Olympus, the home of the gods. And this is the story of the gods' battle against him. But that's also too long. So actually, and I have to be honest, my favorite myth in doing this book on Hermes was a weird one. Not a lot of people know this myth. I had to do a lot of research to find this one. It is the Greek myth that explains why dogs sniff each other's butts. Like they literally had a myth for that, and it's hilarious, but I'll save that for another day. Hephaestus was the god of fire. Like god of war, the Greeks had two gods of fire. Hephaestus, this gives you a clue of the sort of fire he was the god of. His Roman name was Vulcan, which means volcano. He's the god of explosive burning fire, kind of the destructive side of fire, but he's also the god of creation. He, among all the gods, is able to express his beauty in making the most perfect, beautiful things. He's also a sweet guy who the other gods kind of take advantage of and pick on a lot. Specifically, his wife is pretty bad to him. His wife is Aphrodite. And you already know, like, oh yeah, she's in love with Ares. Yeah, his brother. So like, he's really upset by that. He finds out they've betrayed him. And this is the moment that he's seeking his revenge. He's burning on fire. He's like a volcano ready to go. And in that last panel, you see him stretching a little thread out. That's him creating a web of adamantine, an unbreakable metal, one molecule thick. And he creates this net that nobody could see to trap his wife and his brother. And then that brings me to Dionysos, the book that was supposed to have come out last Tuesday, but hasn't yet. And it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because normally I would just be talking about Dionysos, but I don't know if you all are creative types, if you've made something. I'm sure you've all made something in your life. And a lot of times, right when you finish something, it's hard to tell what you like about it, if you like it at all. And for me, for Dionysos, in many ways, it's still like that. Like, this book is so new, I couldn't tell you what my favorite story is. So instead, I'm going to do is tell you about a little bit about how I make the books about Dionysos. So first off, Dionysos is the last Olympian. He's a new type of god. That's why the book is called The New God. He was born of a mortal woman. The figure you're looking at here is Hestia. Hestia was the first Olympian. She's Zeus's big sister. She is the god of fire, as you may have guessed, since she's made of fire. But she was the fire. Hephaestus was like a volcano fire. She's the fire that's in your house that keeps you warm. She's the fire that helps you cook. She was the like gentle, beneficial side of fire. Well, so was Hephaestus, but anyway. And she, like I said, she's the first Olympian. Very, very important in Greek religion. You would actually say a prayer to her before you said a prayer to any other goddess or god. But she's not in too many myths. Probably because you may have guessed listening to these myths, when you're in a myth, you often come out looking like a jerk. She was so important to the Greeks, they wouldn't tell bad stories about her. So there wasn't that many stories at all. But because she was so important, I wanted her to have her moment. So basically, in the book Dionysus, she is the narrator. She tells the story of the newest god. She's the first god telling the story of the newest god. Now, this is a picture of me doing research. Research is the most important part of me doing one of these books. I'm pretty creative. I'm good at making up stuff off the top of my head, but I'm not as creative as every single person lived before me. I spend a couple months just reading stories. Every old story written by an ancient Greek or an ancient Roman about the gods or god I'm doing. And I have my sketchbook out and I just doodle little thoughts and ideas. As I read these stories, I try to let these characters come alive. In the case of Dionysus, I spent all this time drawing Dionysus himself over and over again, in every pose, in every mood, from every angle, doing things I knew he was going to do in the book and doing things I knew he wouldn't do in the book, so that he eventually became like a living being to me, something that I could picture over and over again very easily how he would react in situations. And once I get to that point where the character I've drawn him so many times I could practically draw them with my eyes closed, I start writing. I mentioned this up front. Comics, graphic novels, whatever term you want to use for them, they are words and pictures coming together to tell a story, right? So when I write a book, a graphic novel, a comic, I don't write it first because, well, I don't just write the words first, because then I'm not using the pictures to help tell the story, not as much as I could. And I can't draw the pictures without there being a story. So what I do both at the same time. Essentially, if it's an idea that I could express better in words, I write it. If it's an idea I can express easier in pictures, I draw it. And I'll just fill up books and books, sketchbooks of these sort of things, words and pictures, telling a story, but they don't look like comics yet. But as I keep working, I'll start, you start seeing things that look like rough pages begin to appear, and then they get a lot more refined. And then it's looking like comics pages, and you still see writing and you still see the pictures. It's all together. I'll make a map of what the book needs to be. Like, these are color-coded bits. Like, it's very easy when you're writing to go down a path that you don't mean to. So I will set myself some general guidelines. I'm not insane about following these, but like, if you look at the dark blue section, it says Journey to the Underworld. I know I have essentially 4 pages to chronicle Dionysus's journey to the underworld. So if I'm on like page 7 of my layouts, I know I've done something wrong and I need to stop and go back and rework it. And then I do the actual writing part. I actually write it up while simultaneously drawing the tight finishes. Not tight finishes, the tight roughs. This is essentially the blueprint for the entire comic. This is what I show my editors at my publishing house. The words and the pictures, they can read it. They're not together yet, but you read them together, you get the idea of the story. And I use this as my guideline to create from there after they give me feedback like, that doesn't make sense. So I didn't really talk about this too much with Zeus, but the cover of Zeus, but I did a little bit, like how I draw fast and a lot of times it doesn't work out very well. This is a version that didn't work out well. You can see what my pencils look like. They're very rough. Some of the figures are just like circles and things. I like to write in the pencils really roughly and then go into ink and make it a little bit more finished. This is a version that didn't work. I just didn't like it. Here's the version that did work. I'll toggle back and forth. You can see pretty much the same layouts, just little differences here and there. But this version worked, and it was the other one I didn't. I knew it worked because I finished it. Then I take it, I scan it, I add in the panel borders, fill it, like clean up the artwork a little bit. Then I take that, I add in the first pass of colors. I do this digitally. Then I go and I add in stuff like special effects and sound effects and gradients. And at this point, this is where I'm finished. I send this off to my publisher, and somebody at my publisher actually drops in the text. I just hate doing that part. So I have somebody there do it. And they put it into the word balloons I've already done. And then about 9 months later, normally, I get the book back and I celebrate. But as you know, things went a little bit awry with Dionysus. So that's pretty much my presentation, but I wanted to share a little something with you. Olympians is a 12-book series. I hope to come back and do more Greek mythology someday, but I needed to do something a little bit different. So what I'm doing is my next project, what I'm literally working on right now, well, not right now because I'm talking to you right now, but like later today right now, is a 4-book series called Asgardians, Retelling Norse Mythology. And these are pages from the first book, Odin. And we open up on a battlefield of Vikings, and there's just dead people everywhere, and crows are eating their eyes and horrible stuff like that. And suddenly this sky opens up, and these silvery riders come out. They're the Valkyries, the choosers of the dead. And these women alight on the field, and they pick up the souls of the dead Vikings, and they carry them off to Valhalla, which is the home of the valiant dead. This is the Viking idea of heaven. You go inside this hall, and there's just thousands of people feasting, drinking, having a good time. Every night they get up and they kill each other and are reborn, which sounds nightmarish, but for the ancient Vikings, this was like their idea of heaven. And this last panel here at the bottom is a shot of Odin himself, the king of Asgard, sitting atop his throne of Hildescaf, looking out over everything. So if you want to keep in touch with me or ask me questions and stuff, a good place to do it is to write me at my Instagram, the George O'Connor, or my website, georgeoconnorbooks.com. Now, I zoomed through that really quickly because what I want to do now is I actually want to share a little bit of live drawing. I talked a little bit, but not enough, honestly, about how I like to draw fast. Oh, so I'm actually going to really quickly draw a picture for you. I'm also going to talk a little bit about design that goes into these goddesses or gods. The gods could look like anything they want, so I had to create my own version of what they look like, and I tried to include some clues in the drawings themselves about what they look like. I'm going to draw Dionysos because this book should have been out by now. First thing I do when I draw Dionysos, hey, and if you want to draw along, hey, why not, right? Pretend this is your piece of paper. Put your marks in about the same corresponding area. Dionysus, mostly a pretty happy god. I didn't mention this. He is the god of wine, the god of getting drunk then. He's also the god of insanity, of losing your mind. And he's the god of breaking down social boundaries. He was very unpopular in certain parts of the ancient world because where people had power, his job was to tear down that power. He's a god of rebirth in that way. So let's first draw his eyebrows. Just like two little hills, nothing that exciting there, nothing too hard. We can all do that. Then I draw the top of his eyes. This is the thing I do when I draw. I never draw the bottom lid because you draw the bottom lid, it makes the person look like they're stunned, unless you want to draw somebody stunned. I tend just to draw the top lid because that's got the heavier eyelashes. A lot of my drawing is about the simplification. Take a look at the person across from you, look at their eyes. Look at the iris, specifically the color part. Notice that the iris, you don't see the entire iris at once. It's always a little bit covered by the top lid. So I draw these two-letter U's. Then here's the first clue to what he is the god of. Remember I said he's the god of wine? Wine comes from grapes. Grapes come in two different varieties, purple and green. That's to symbolize the grapes. It's a thing that actually some people really have, heterochromative. David Bowie had one blue eye, one green eye. It gives him a weird look. It can be very attractive, but can also be very unsettling. And because Dionysus is the god of losing your mind, going crazy, it gives you a little bit of a touched look. And so he has that. His nose is 5 lines. You draw one parenthesis, a bigger parenthesis, a little reverse check mark coming in, a parenthesis doing a push-up, and a parenthesis for his other nostril. Boom, 5-line nose, easy. I mostly draw him as a pretty manically happy god. He's got a lot of different moods. I draw that little snot rocket thing. I don't know what it's called, that's underneath your nose. And then I draw underneath that what looks like the world's smallest little smile. That's just the dip in his lip, right? Then I give him a big wide smile. I also like to give him a toothy grin. He's not like a guy who's just going to smile a little bit. And then let's give him a little bit of a shadow underneath that. And maybe just a little bit of a bottom lip. Dionysus, like most of the gods, he's very good looking. And interesting, Dionysus was trans. He was born a woman and became a man. So I try to give him a look that's a little bit androgynous. A little boy, a little girl at once. So he has a thin face, good cheekbones. Let's give him the bottom of an ear. Now, here's another clue as to what he's a god of. Like I said, wine, grapes. If you've ever seen grapes growing in the wild, they have those very distinctive corkscrews. That's how I draw his hair. Drawing curly hair is like the best because you really can't make a mistake because it's curly. If it looks weird, it's like, no, his hair was just curly. Like my hair is curly. Well, it's not curly anymore. It stopped being curly this year. I don't know why. Final clue, and this is such an obvious clue. This is not one I came up with myself. he literally has grapes in his hair. The guy has bunches of grapes in his hair. So you draw a few bunches and a couple grapes. And there you go. Let's give him a neck. And that's my really quick drawing. The secret, I think, to drawing over and over, like to drawing, getting better, is to just draw a lot, draw fast. Don't worry about making mistakes. This is the thing. I'm a gamer as well. And sometimes I'll play a game on the easy levels, on the easy settings, so I can like kind of learn the controls and level up faster. This is the drawing equivalent of leveling up. You draw like a simple picture, draw it a few times. Instead of spending hours on one drawing, trying to make everything perfect, understanding you'll never make anything perfect, spend that hours drawing simple, quick drawings really, really quickly. So that was a lot. I don't think I took a break even once to step. I know class ends like in 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, we're going to be dismissing out in about 2 minutes.
All right.
Good job. First and foremost, I want to say thank you, Mr. O'Connor, for taking the time to meet with us. So much of what you talk about tie in, obviously, to art, our art classes, English classes, and our history classes. So I really appreciate you talking about each of these characters and then guiding us through your writing process and showing the drawing. Obviously, we find it more engaging when we have people on campus and we're able to do this. Obviously, COVID is so hard.
Such a bummer.
These are very hard to have. Hopefully, one day you can come down and spend some time on campus, talking with our students, being in the classroom is always a valuable experience for the students. And then obviously having engaging dialogue with kids where they can ask questions and then see the light bulbs turn on. Those are always wonderful. But
Yeah,
again,
I
really appreciate you taking the time again to go through all of this with us. Wish you best of luck in the sales of your upcoming books. I'm sure a lot of kids are going to start Googling you and getting your books. And, we certainly appreciate it. So thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Taylor, for the work you did in bringing this all together and the introduction. And the bell just rang on campus. So students are going to be logging off and going to lunch. So we'll see you all soon. Have a good Friday, everybody. Mr. O'Connor will be in touch for sure. Thanks again. And stay well. All
Thanks,
right.
everybody. Have a good lunch.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was so wonderful. I really enjoyed your presentation. Yeah, I think the kids really enjoyed that.
It was definitely, that was my speed version, but I think I got it almost all in. That was